Chapter 1. The Instant of Disappearance. The sun's disk vanished in an instant. There was no flash, no crack. The familiar light simply disappeared, leaving the world in a gray half-light, as if someone had drawn a curtain. People looking out of windows did not immediately understand what had happened. On the streets, everything was quiet. Cars were parked, streetlights emitted faint glows, but the daylight, the warmth and clarity people had relied on, was gone. The Earth's atmosphere still retained some warmth, but it was quickly fading. The wind became sharp and penetrating, seeping through clothes and walls. On the first floors of buildings, people shivered from the cold, unable to believe that an ordinary day had become the beginning of the end of their familiar world. At first, panic was almost non-existent. People spoke quietly to each other. "Look, the sun, it's gone. Maybe it's just clouds?" But scientists had already detected anomalies. Photometric sensors registered the total absence of solar radiation. The air temperature was dropping by degrees every few minutes, and a sense of unease was growing. Television and the internet tried to reassure people, but the charts and warnings only intensified the tension. The sun has stopped emitting light. The consequences will be catastrophic. Chapter 2. The first hours. Within a few hours, the temperature on the Earth's surface dropped by 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. Rivers and lakes began losing their upper layers of warmth, and oceans cooled at a dizzying rate. Photosynthesis stopped, leaving plants without energy. Insects, birds, and small animals were the first to die. On city streets, it grew colder. Electrical generators ran at maximum capacity, but fuel supplies were limited. People rushed to stores, buying anything that could provide warmth. Firewood, coal, kerosene. Panic spread, and people tried to reach loved ones, exchanging urgent messages. "Did you see that? The sun just disappeared. We must stay inside, don't go out." But how can we survive without heat? Ocean currents slowed, storms intensified, and atmospheric processes began to change. People felt that the familiar world was collapsing, though they could not yet comprehend the scale of the catastrophe. Chapter 3. The first day. 24 hours after the sun disappeared, the average surface temperature dropped by 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. Plants in gardens and forests began to wither. Leaves fell, grasses and shrubs blackened from the cold. Animals struggled to find food and warmth, but most perished. Birds fell from branches, small mammals froze in their burrows. Humans took refuge indoors, heating themselves as best they could. Fuel supplies were burned at an alarming rate. The psychological strain was immense. Fear, despair, and the realization that their ordinary lives had vanished forever. Underground passages became shelters for those who could descend. Subway stations, bunkers, abandoned tunnels. People tried to organize life there, sharing food, building makeshift sleeping areas, preparing heat sources. Every day became a struggle for survival in a world turned hostile. Chapter 4. The first weeks. Within a week, ice sheets covered much of the continents. The average temperature fell below -50 degrees Celsius. Forests, pastures, and fields froze, and most animals perished. Humanity was forced to retreat into underground cities and bunkers, where artificial climates were maintained. Science and technology became the only hope. Hydroponic farms, air and water recirculation systems, autonomous energy networks. Humans experimented with artificial sources of light and heat to sustain life. The psychological toll was enormous. Many lost their sanity. Groups organized round-the-clock shifts to maintain heating and oxygen. Some wrote diaries recording the last days of normal life on the surface. Chapter 5. The first months. After a month, surface temperatures reached -70 degrees Celsius. Oceans were almost entirely frozen. The atmosphere compressed, and winds reached destructive speeds. Humans retreated completely underground or onto specially fortified platforms. Scientists and engineers created new varieties of plants and animals capable of surviving without sunlight. Genetic modifications enabled crops to grow under artificial lighting in hydroponic farms. Dialogue within the shelters reflected fear and hope. We must stick together. But what if the fuel runs out? We will adapt. We have no choice. Every day was a fight for survival, and humanity learned to endure in a world of perpetual darkness. Chapter 6. 1 year later. A year after the sun disappeared, the Earth had become an icy desert. Temperatures reached extreme lows, and surface life was impossible. Humans survived only in isolated underground biospheres. The sun's gravitational influence vanished. Planetary orbits became unstable, creating the risk of collisions. Scientists tried to stabilize trajectories while focusing on the survival of humanity. Underground cities became autonomous civilizations. People maintained life with hydroponic farms, water purification, and energy generators. Social structures transformed. Old governments disappeared, replaced by local communities governed by knowledge and survival skills. Chapter 7. Decades later, decades passed. The surface world had become a permanent icy wasteland. Oceans were covered with hundreds of meters of ice, and continents were nearly impassable frozen masses. Life on the surface was almost extinct. Only bacteria and microorganisms in geothermal sources survived. Humanity thrived underground in autonomous biospheres. Advanced technologies like hydroponics, geothermal energy, and air recirculation systems supported life. Artificial light sources simulated day and night cycles in subterranean halls. Social structures had shifted drastically. Old governments vanished. Local communities were led by those who could maintain climate stability and the functioning of life support systems. Within these underground cities, debates raged about resource allocation, educating new generations without sunlight, and preserving memories of the old world. Perpetual darkness altered human psychology. Some lost their minds while others developed heightened perception of heat, sound, taste, and artificial light. Chapter 8. New life forms and science. Science became central to the new civilization. Biologists, geneticists, and chemists created plants and microorganisms capable of surviving under artificial light and chemical energy sources. "We can grow potatoes and tomatoes," said one scientist inspecting the lamps. "But what about trees? They are essential for oxygen balance." "Trees can't survive without the sun," replied an engineer. "But we can create artificial photosynthetic structures." Humans experimented with different energy sources: geothermal, chemical, and biological. Underground cities gradually became self-sufficient. Animals adapted to perpetual darkness. Mammals, insects, and fish grown in biospheres evolved rapidly. Genetic experiments produced species with enhanced survival capabilities. Chapter 9. The psychology of eternal night. The psychological effects of the sun's disappearance were profound. People lost orientation, couldn't gauge time, and experienced the disappearance of seasonal rhythms. Psychologists developed adaptation programs, artificial seasons, light cycles, and simulations of the sun's movement. "Children will never see the sun," one psychologist said. "They'll have to live in eternal darkness." "We must show them life is possible," a colleague replied, "or they won't survive." Social isolation and fear of constant darkness became the norm. Yet alongside this, a sense of community grew. People united to survive. Eternal night strengthened resilience, patience, and the ability to adapt. Chapter 10. Orbits and chaos in the solar system. The absence of the sun affected not only life on Earth, but the entire solar system. Planetary orbits became unstable. Jupiter, Saturn, and other planets moved chaotically. Comets and asteroids increased the risk of collisions. Scientists built observation and modeling systems. They tried to predict potential collisions and develop defense strategies, but human capabilities were limited. Energy, resources, and information were insufficient to control the cosmos fully. Meanwhile, enormous domes with artificial sunlight were constructed underground, simulating solar rays. People tried to preserve culture, memories of nature, and the old world. Chapter 11. Generations born in darkness. New generations had never seen the sun. For them, sunlight was a myth, a legend. They knew of it only from descriptions by elders, illustrations, and simulations. "Mom, will the sun ever come back?" a child asked. "No," replied the mother. But we can create our own light and live with it. These children grew under artificial lamps, in biospheres, learning about the plants and animals created by humans. They had never felt the heat or cold of the surface, but they understood that life meant managing resources and adapting constantly. Education became a tool for survival. Children were trained not only in science and engineering, but in resilience, collaboration, and the ethics of living in an artificial world. Legends of the sun were told like fairy tales, stories of a bright past that shaped their culture and imagination. Chapter 12. Philosophy and Legacy. Hundreds of years passed. Humans had learned to survive, but the world had changed beyond recognition. The disappearance of the sun became a global tragedy, a lesson for all living beings. Life depends on energy, light, and warmth. Philosophers developed new concepts, what it means to exist in eternal darkness, how to preserve culture and morality without natural light. Artificial suns became symbols of hope, culture, and human ingenuity. "We lost the sun," said a wise elder, "but we have not lost ourselves." Indeed, humanity had endured the catastrophe. It adapted, evolved, but did not disappear. A new civilization thrived in eternal night, creating its own light, ecosystems, and social and moral values. The legend of the sun lived on, not as a source of light, but as an enduring symbol of life, warmth, and hope. Epilogue. The world without the sun had become an icy, dark expanse. Humanity survived in underground biospheres, constructing artificial stars, cultivating new ecosystems, and forging a civilization adapted to eternal darkness. Surface life had mostly vanished. Only microscopic organisms clung to survival in geothermal refuges. The human spirit proved resilient. Though the sun was gone, people invented their own sources of light, created new plants and animals, and built societies governed by knowledge and cooperation. Stories, art, and culture persisted, ensuring that memory of the sun endured, shaping ethics, philosophy, and imagination. The sun became a legend, a myth of warmth and life that once existed, reminding humanity of its dependency on energy, the fragility of life, and the power of adaptation. In eternal night, humanity had learned to shine.